What's up, guys? Doug Polk here, and we're back with another episode of Poker Hands. Now, today we're going to be taking a look at a hand that happened this year in the Aussie Millions. I tweeted out and asked you guys what hands you wanted to see me review, and this was one that I thought was pretty interesting. So let's go ahead and jump into this hand from the Aussie Millions.
Well, there's no chance he folded ace queen. So no chance, guys. No chance.
Fold.
I mean, there's a chance.
Okay.
I mean,
You know what? Today,
the graphics did say ace queen suited, and
Yeah.
we're just giving him the benefit of the doubt, saying that it's impossible.
yeah,
It
there
did
is.
say ace queen suited. I'm quite in question now.
Is Del
I'm about
Vecchio
50-50.
raising this 20,000 10-5 offsuit?
Yeah, I wonder if this is just like the hand before the last hand of the level or something. You know, wow. If I called up Kevin Martin and said, "Hey, Kevin Martin, do you want to come do a commentary with me? Oh, by the way, we're gonna see like 4 or 5 flat calls with Ace King while you're here." Kevin would have said, "No way, I'm leaving Canada. Get out of here. I'm never talking to you again."
This hand begins after the money bubble has burst, so all of the players are going to be cashing, and that does make a difference in the hand. Action begins by folding to the hijack, and someone whose name that I'm sorry I am going to butcher opens it up. I'm going to say Duy, but again, I have no idea. Opens the ace king and the hijack, obviously standard. Now to the button, and Hopkins looks down to see 9-8 suited. You got a couple options here. You can go for the flat, you can go for the 3-bet. As long as you're mainly playing this hand, I'm okay with it. And he does decide to go ahead and call. Action now folds to the blinds. Wait a second. Have I mentioned the giveaway? The main event starts for me tomorrow, and I'm giving away 3% of my winnings. Now, I want you guys to know we have given away over $40,000 or $45,000 here in these giveaways. Last year's giveaway, I think somebody won $25,000, as well as 10 people who won around $500. We had another winner last year for something around $14,000. So people have actually done pretty well in these giveaways. I know that they're a shit show and that most people won't win because there's so many entries, but there is some value here. So if you're interested in a chance to win 3% of my main event this year, you can enter in the description below. Who knows? If it's our year, maybe we're giving out $250,000. But we're probably not. Anyway, back to the hand. At this point, both blinds look down at fairly bad hands. Well, I'm assuming because the big blind folds doesn't show his hands. Anyway, they both fold, and let's take a flop.
Even the thought of that would be so disgusting.
I would have stayed in my igloo
Yeah,
back in Canada.
but somehow we see it again. Okay, so 10-5 offsuit did not play.
Yeah, with graphical error. Let's reset the hand. I believe we have a button open, or sorry, hijack open from ace king,
And then
button
a
flats.
button
That
calls.
makes more sense.
Yes.
Just the graphicals were a little bit
Yeah,
wonky.
We sorted that out, though.
Yeah. We're going to see a continuation bet from ace king, and Hopkins has a gutter backdoor flush draw. I don't really see him going anywhere just yet.
Little
in
does he know
position.
how bad of shape he is
Yeah, that'd
in.
be an awful straight to hit. 10.
Let's see a 10 dealer. Oh, this is spicy.
A race here would be interesting. Looks like that's what's going to happen. Pretty small bet here on the flop, right? Let's point that out. 17K until, 50 something.
51,000. Call.
The flop comes queen jack 4, and both players have straight draws. However, a 10 is going to be a really bad card for Hopkins because he's going to have the lower end of the straight. It's also important to keep some stack size consideration in here that this open pre-flop was to 2.5 blinds, and they have roughly 29 blinds effective here on the flop, with Hopkins being covered. The actions on the flop, I think, are pretty interesting from both players because really they've got a lot of play that they can go with. For starters, both players have the sort of hands that could definitely be eligible for a bluff. Duy has a gutter to the nuts as well as the backdoor nut flush draw. Also, having the ace of clubs will make it so his opponent folds more often when he bets the flop. And then, of course, he can also improve to an ace or a king for top pair, top kicker. So he's got a decent amount of removal and equity. I don't mind deciding to bet here. It's also worth noting that when you do have ace king on these kinds of boards, you don't want to always bet, because if you always bet, your opponent can start to get kind of aggressive against your flop bet because you're not going to have enough value bets. So a good way of mixing this up would be to sometimes bet and sometimes check to try and keep your opponents guessing. Anyway, he does decide to go ahead and bet, and now the action's over to Hopkins, who has a gutter and a backdoor flush draw. Generally speaking, these hands make decent bluff candidates because he, of course, can hit a straight and a 10 or a flush if it goes running hearts, and his opponent might have a variety of hands that want to bluff here on the flop. Also, if his opponent does call the flop, he can barrel with this hand, and it's kind of a nice hand to bet with because you don't block the flush draws that might fold in a later street. You don't block the open enders like king 10. You do block 10-9, I suppose, but that's not one to be too worried about either. So in reality, this hand ends up being a nice hand to be able to bluff on some later streets. It's also worth noting that call is certainly acceptable, and folding isn't out of the question, particularly against some players that you might think are on the tighter side of the spectrum. Anyway, he does decide to bump it up. I like the raise, and it's back over to Duy with his ace-king. This is a bit of an interesting spot, and I think if you have ace-king without a club, it's a fairly clear fold. You're going to have plenty of other better hands, but with the ace of clubs, it's a little bit closer. He has really two decisions. He can fold or he can call. I think raising at this point would be pretty spewy. I suppose I would like a call here from time to time just to give yourself some ability to play and bluff some later streets on cards like a club, or if your opponent checks back the turn. This way you actually can have a few floats. But the thing is, you could just have hands like king 10 or 10-9 or a flush draw. So I guess I'm not too worried either way. If you want to sometimes call and sometimes fold, that's fine. And I'm sure you guys are like, God damn it, Doug, you haven't said anything about this hand so far. Basically, every street has just been, you can fold, call, or raise. Why do I watch this video? And that's because poker's a beautiful game. A game that we've all come to love. It's a fair game.
Wow,
Whip call. 10 for the ultimate. Oh!
Oh, wow.
Did I say fair? I think I meant cruel. Cruel game.
Checking or betting?
And it's the offsuit.
And it's the offsuit 10. So GG Hopkins here.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for playing the Aussie Millions. Enjoy your 25K cash or whatever it is.
Oh, he's thinking, like, how can he put his opponent on ace king? He called the raise so quickly.
This is the ultimate cooler. This is an RU cooler for sure here. Can't do much else.
Hopkins like, oh man, how do I get my value now, right?
Right, Hopkins is like, wow, how lucky am I? I raised the flop, turned the perfect card. Little does he know this is the perfect card to get a payout slip.
55,000.
He is drawing dead and also not going to get away from this.
Two raises, 110,000.
Right, he checked min raises. I mean, there's just no way you can fold here. You're sickened as Hopkins facing a check min raise, but you know. I mean, you can't do anything. It's just like
I would just snap going.
as soon as someone. But I mean, you have to be sickened though, right? Like when someone check min raises you here, they don't have queen queen. I mean, probably not.
It's possible.
It is possible. It is possible. But I mean, like this is a pretty hilarious like decision as far as sizing goes, because he only has a little bit more. Just check shove. Check shoving here actually looks weaker than check min raising, right?
Yeah, but there's no way.
There's no difference really. I mean, he's just got to go with his hand.
After Duy does decide to make the call, the turn comes the 10. This is a disaster for Hopkins. Both players have a straight. Hopkins completely stone dead in the turn. Duy has the nuts, and he's going to win at least this pot and any additional chips that go into it. Duy checks over to Hopkins, as he should with all of his hands, and now Hopkins has a crystal clear value bet. You've got the third nuts. There are many hands that can call you. Frankly, I don't think I have to explain this. It's worth noting I wouldn't mind seeing a slightly larger or smaller flop size to make stacks a little more playable. Here it's a bit awkward, yeah, slightly more than the pot, so a jam is a little bit too big, although certainly a play that you could make. And if you raise it a little bit smaller, then maybe he could set himself up for some multi-street stuff. I really don't mind either of those plays, but as played, he's got 180 behind into 160, and you generally want to try and avoid leaving yourself situations on, for example, the turn, where you're going to have slightly over a pot size bet left, because then it takes away your ability to have a turn and river bet, or to go all in on the turn with as many holdings. The action checks over to Hopkins, and at this point, I really would not mind seeing him just go all in. There are many hands he can get value from. Hands like kings or aces might decide to call. Certainly hands like two pair will call. There's a possibility that some combo draws could call. And if he does end up getting a hand like king queen to fold, well, at least he denied some equity, even though obviously you would prefer a call. Hopkins decides to go the other direction and decides to bet small here, which I don't mind. I think it's an okay play. And now the action's back over to Duy. Now with ace king, he can really do one of two things. He can either check raise all in, or he can call. Generally speaking, I like a call here, and the reason is because we have plenty of other hands that aren't nearly as strong that are going to want to check call, and then maybe possibly check fold the river. And by putting in some nutted hands, I think it helps protect our range. It's also worth noting I don't think he's going to have a straight here very often. Duy can't check call or bet call the flop with a hand like 9-8 unless it's 9-8 of clubs. He can't bet call with a hand like King 9 unless it's King 9 of clubs, and he can't really bet call the flop with Ace King unless it's either Ace King of hearts or Ace King with maybe the Ace of clubs. So he doesn't have too many straights here on the flop when he does decide to call this raise. And Hopkins can absolutely have hands like King 9 suited or 9-8 suited. And is a little bit more likely to possibly have a hand like Queen Jack or 4s given these lines. So I think in general I would prefer just a check call here on the turn, but I really don't mind deciding to check raise all in. An option that I don't think exists though is the one that happens, check min raise. I want to give you guys a general rule: only check min raise in spots where essentially there are either lots of combos of a hand or card removal plays a huge role. So for example, if there are 4 hearts on a board and you want to raise the river, min raising could be fine. If there are 4 in a row, or if it's 1 to a straight, min raising can be fine. These are spots where min raising is acceptable, particularly on the river. But you don't want to be doing it on boards where there are a lot of cards that can really change the texture here. Clubs, straights, board pair changes this. So in general, you don't want to be check min raising. You want to just be putting it in. Back over to Hopkins with 9-8. You're not thrilled. But at the same time, your opponent can't really have King 9 or 9-8 too often. Sorry, well, 9-8 is a chop. Your opponent can't really have King 9 or Ace King too often, given the line. He will have Ace King substantially more than King 9. But there are some hands you beat. There is a chance that Duy has a hand like a set Queens or Jacks or 4s could be taking this line, and they're worried about the run out. He could have a hand like Queen Jack. He could maybe once in a while have a hand like the nut flush draw trying to commit himself. I'm not saying that these are super likely scenarios, but the combination of all of them, I feel like you're just going to have to go with this hand. And it sucks. This is your tournament life on the line. But let's look at your odds here. If you decide to jam, which is effectively is putting you in, you're really only going to be putting in your last, let's just say 120K to win a pot if he calls, of roughly in the vicinity of 360 plus 1, roughly 520. So you only need to have just about 20% equity to go with it. I don't think this is a spot you're going to be able to let go. Now, maybe if you have some super strong reads, then perhaps, I don't believe that. I just don't believe that.
I mean, this would be... Because he can't have King 9, right? So he can only have Ace King. King 9 would be absolutely insane, unless it was King 9 of clubs, which probably still jams flop. Wow, credit to Hopkins for even, like, thinking about this here. If he is actually... I mean, this would be the most insane fold of the year if he folds 9-8 suited here to the check min raise.
No, there's just no way.
But look at him. He knows he's pained, right? Like, he can tell. He can tell.
He's gonna regret it.
Oh, go with your heart. Hopkins.
Wow.
Fold it.
It's not folding, Jason.
No, I'm rooting for him to find a fold here. This would be an insane fold. But you can tell he wants to.
It's just not possible.
Come on, Twitch chat. He needs your energy right now. I mean, this is an amazing tank. Every second that goes by, I'm just more and more impressed.
It is impressive that his instincts are set in.
Come on, we can't. I know we can't actually fold, but can we? Can we do it? Hopkins, come on, let it go. Just fold, say nice hand. Show your cards.
No,
you can't fold here. You have the second nuts effectively, because he can't have King 9.
You have to remember, he raised the flop to get this card,
Yeah,
to get this exact card.
Right, and now he's tanking here. Wow. Can we fold this hand? Come on. There's just no way we could fold, but come on, please. Let's make it
Oh
happen.
my God, he's thinking about it. I mean,
Guys.
he's legit thinking about it. He just wouldn't waste this much time if he...
Huge credit to Hopkins for even thinking about it, right? Come on, this is insane. He's thinking about it here. Great instincts. Fold. Nice hand. Show your cards. No one will believe it. What a hero. What a hero Hopkins would be. But you can't blame him, of course. God, he's so confused.
It's hard to fold here.
It's impossible to fold here. Because, like, what if there's any chance that Duy just has, like, King 10 of clubs?
No way.
No way! Wow!
Oh my goodness!
Can I see? Ace King!
Oh my God! Give it to him, Twitch chat. The fold of the
Oh my
month.
God! Wow!
This is a constant theme on this show. people making big laydowns. Sometimes they're right, like this hand. Sometimes they're wrong, like yesterday. And I'm not saying, or 2 days ago, I'm not saying that those are the same hands at all. But the point is, this tells me two things. First off, bluffing is good. People will fold big hands and they'll also fold their bluffs. So do not be afraid, particularly on the bigger stack in a tournament, to put some pressure on people. I mean, people like folding. And second off, sometimes you're going to have to just get stacked. I feel like a broken record at this point, you know? I mean, they're in the money. He still cashes if he bricks here. Maybe if there was some bubble dynamic at play, it could make it a little closer. But to me, I think this is a hand you're just going to have to get in. You don't have ace-king in your pre-flop range. You could have king-9. That is a better hand to call with. But your range to continue here can't just be king-9, or your opponent will print when they're raising you here on the turn. That's going to do it here from me. I'm going to be playing the main event tomorrow. If you want to follow along for updates, I'll be updating on Instagram stories at Doug Polk Poker, so you can see how your probably not 3% is doing. Have I mentioned the giveaway?